medium term at least.
Risto, bring us to the future. What is basically according to you, the core business transformation of, I mean, Bolt from the real estate perspective of Bolt, for instance?
Yeah, I mean, the core needs to happen, as Arnaud just said, like, it's not about the pilots, although pilots do play a very pivotal role, like, you know, you need to validate the case first of all, but of course, yeah, like a small pilot would not create any transformational change. It needs to be something bigger, because, like, you know, if you make a little pilot and your rest of the company, like in terms of maintenance, accounting, finance, runs a very manual, then, like, you know, nothing will happen. So, but at least, like, you know, the pilots that we're doing, starting small, scaling in a reasonable way, that, you know, for example, the smart energy meters that we want to roll out globally, how we did the pilot was that we took the biggest consumers. We knew that they need a bit more attention, and try to validate the case with the highest costing. And if it makes sense, then the cheaper ones would definitely make even more sense. So we just did it for the HQ. We did it, like, you know, very close by, so that we can validate, and then do in stages in order to make it so that we wouldn't take on a big enough bite that we couldn't chew, and then also you could lose out a lot.
Thank you. So a burning question that I always ask myself as well is the topic of essential versus non-essential innovations. So when lockdown started, all of the retail had an etiquette, either essential and they could remain open, or non-essential, they were forced to be shut down. And I think the same is happening now with all of these innovations. The corporates are looking at them saying, is it essential innovations that I need to continue to invest in because it's strategic, to differentiate from competitors, etc.? Or is it non-essential innovations I need to shut the cost on? So I would like to have a bit more your opinion on this, Maurice. What are the most strategic innovations to differentiate from competitions?
Yeah, good question. As I already mentioned during my presentation, I always split it in digitalization and industrialization for contractors. And I think digitalization is most promising, but let's start with industrialization. Quite often it is said contractors, they have to work like automotive companies. They have to invest in factories, and of course they have to do. However, it is very complicated for them, because they are active in a very volatile market. When you invest in a plant for housing, for houses, for example, then you want to run that plant always on full capacity. But that is unfortunately not possible in the construction sector, because it's quite often that we are in a boom, or then the demand enormously declines, and that doesn't work when you have a factory. And that we already saw 100 years ago. Ford invented the assembly line, and Edison, also not a nobody, he bought the patent from Ford. He wanted to use it in the housing market, but it didn't work. For some reason he went bankrupt, and that we have seen that many times in the past, that this investing in housing factories, it's just very difficult, and you can do it, but you have to do it with little steps, because your fixed investment is just too high when there is a downturn in the market. So maybe you can invest for just for a capacity of 50% of your total production. So then you're always sure that even during a downturn, during a crisis, that you can run your factory on full capacity. But otherwise you will definitely have problems when the market is against you. And therefore I'm more in favor of digitalization, and especially in the construction sector, it lagged behind. And quite often it is said, yeah, people work in a traditional way, but I don't think that is the case. For a long time, digitalization wasn't really helpful for contractors because it wasn't mobile till 10 or 15 years ago, and a computer at their office doesn't add that much value, and at the ending you have to go through the construction site with your drawings. And so at the moment that digitalization was also mobile and you were able to go with a device to a construction site, at that moment it started to add value for the construction sector. And well, we are still in that phase. 10 to 15 years is not such a long time for a sector to adapt a new technology, especially when they were lagging behind because it didn't add that much value in the past. And we see all kind of examples like digital twins. How great is it that you have a digital twin of your house? And I just give last example. The window of my car was broken, and the window of my house was broken. And I just called for my car, and they said, okay, what kind of car do you have? And I drove there, and they knew exactly the type and the size. And in half an hour, they changed the window, and it was done. For the window for my house, there aren't any drawings. There's no digital twin. So. The man, he first had to came, he had to measure the window, then he had to come back again and to place the window and remove the old one, and the measuring and the reparation of the window well, costed almost the same time. So how great would it be that he just have a digital twin of my house, and then he sees, okay, I need this kind of window, and he has to come only once. And well, that would be an efficiency gain of almost 50%.
Yeah, thank you. I'd like to ask about the end user perspective. It's also a question that Arno could answer, not only him, but you mentioned Ford, I guess, so they were saying if you ask the customers what they want, they will say faster horses. But faster horses, it doesn't exist. So of course, it's always the question, do you have to listen to the customer, but the customer will not drive innovations, not always, So I would like to ask a bit your perspective. Are the end customers, corporate end users, occupiers pushing the landlords to innovate? Or is it the landlords that must innovate to attract and educate the end customers about what is possible? So starting off maybe with Anna first and then Arno.
It all goes down to the cost of occupancy for the tenant, right? And the biggest risks for our solutions being rejected is when the tenant rejects them, right? They will fail if the tenant rejects them. So just talking again about like simple things, utility prices, right? Tenants pay utility bills, their own utility bills, which means that if the bill is not decarbonized, if it's not efficient, the bills are higher, and then the tenants will move to efficient buildings, right? Because they are paying. They are happy to pay higher rent and still save the money. But tenants are looking not only for cheaper utility fees, they also today look for health, well-being, productivity, and they expect landlords to also cooperate. And then finally, tenants have their own commitments, right? For example, ESG targets, and they expect landlords to cooperate also, not only disclose information, but also just play along, right? Like if a tenant has a target, then the landlord has to be a part of that target and help achieve that target as well.
Absolutely. Clear, thank you. Arno, from a broker perspective?
Yeah, so I mean, the tenant is the center of the universe in real estate, right? If you have no tenants, you have no real estate, and it's the economy, it's the wealth that the corporations create. It's also true in residential real estate. So I think what we're seeing right now is that the market is largely, the innovation in the market is largely driven by tenant demand, which can be boiled down to three essential things. It's reducing the expenses, right? There's a big push now to reduce expenses, to optimize portfolios. There's a tendency to not shrinking, but making portfolios more efficient, more smarter use of space at least, and just working in places that are more conducive to work, to where people are happy to go, where people are happy to work, to feel productive and collaborative with their colleagues. And what we're seeing is this is transforming the market. And we have made a survey last year at JLL. We asked more than 1,000 real estate professionals around the world if they were willing to if they were valuing a tech-enabled building that favor ESG ESG exemplarity and also user experience, 94% of tenants said yes, we are definitely prioritizing such buildings, and the problem is that there's not enough such buildings. So if you have such buildings in your portfolio, you win, and that's where the landlord comes in and can actually learn from this trend and win. And the other thing is that it's on the other side. We also asked the investors and landlords, and 93% of them said yes, we are seeing that we are not necessarily able to make a premium on rents or selling assets, which are upgraded in terms of sustainability, user experience, technology, but it's definitely making their assets protected against any obsolescence, and definitely keeping them at the forefront of the market. So, but that's driven by them. So short answer is yes, tenants are 100% driving this.
And the tenants around the table can share perspective.
Of course. In general, I think both Anna and Honor are speaking the correct voices that we would like to hear. But the main issue, what we get, is that starting from the COVID times, is that is the office worth the commute? Is the main question. And in a lot of cases, as with the COVID times, it was not. Health reasons, all the other kind of stuff, that it was empty, you didn't need to go there, but the question still remains that every day we get the questions, first of all, from the management, like, that we and everybody that we know in the tech field has started the RTO policy. You have some small ones that have opted for remote work, but they do have other kind of like ways how to manage how they manage and mitigate their risks. But we have RTO, which means like return to office policy, and we get monthly questions like, is it worth the commute? In many cases, not. And how to make it worthwhile is again returning to Anna and Arnaud, like giving the flexibility, providing services for landlords, for example, for us, or sorry, not for landlords, but for tenants like for us, as experience. Like, is the office an experience? And you can also sell the experience as a service. It doesn't need to be like a software as a service, but an experience as a service. We don't know how long we want to be with you, because we don't know how much we're going to grow. Are we going to perhaps at one point need more open spaces? Do we need more closed spaces? Do we need more meeting rooms? All of that. Do we need to commute longer distance, short distance? This is something that we would like for the landlords to take care of, and we'd be happy to pay for that.
Thank you. The message is well sent. Now, we have only 10 minutes left roughly, so I would like to ask you the 2026 answer, not the 2025, not the 2024. Is sustainability going to be the accelerator of this transformation, of this gap between laggers, between innovators? Is sustainability going to create what differentiates liquid assets from stranded assets? You know that, of course, ESG was the #1 concern, and we had in Belgium Belgian sovereign funds, which had impact funds to invest in sustainability, and now all of this has melted to go into defense, which became another hot topic. So, from the GRESB perspective, are you still convinced?
Oh yeah, I'm convinced probably more than ever. But given that, let's say, climate change is an existential threat, right? And then 40% of that threat comes from one single industry, which is real estate. And how many countries signed the Paris Accord? 190 plus countries signed the Paris Accord, which says that we will limit the growth in temperature below 1.5 degrees by 2050. 2026, we are already above 1.5 degrees, right? So basically, there will be an impact of climate change to real estate. And then again, you are talking about stranded, right? An asset becomes stranded because the tenants will not be willing to rent a building because, for example, it's inefficient. Tenants pay the utility bills, they just don't want to be in the building, or there's no experience, or there's no other reason, no other reasons to rent that building, to have this building. Or the tenants will not be able to rent that building because A, Well, regulation might be catching up. And in the Netherlands, we already have the regulation that the office buildings with energy label below C well, technically cannot be leased anymore, which creates a lot of stranded assets. Well, ultimately, the physical risk is also going to catch up, right? And the asset is just simply not going to be there. Or it's going to be there below sea level. Or it's going to be there perfectly fine, but without drinking water around it, right? And we will see more and more of those situations.
I would like to have your opinion, maybe, Ricardo?
Well, I think 2026 on this particular point is not that different from 2025. I honestly think so. I think that sustainability has been a differentiator. It will continue to be a differentiator. We do see issues around sustainability that are worldwide based, let's put it this way. We see some areas of the world moving a bit away from this for political reasons. That's not the case that we see here in Europe. So keeping this centered on Europe, I think that it is as central as it was. And as we discussed before, it is the difference. It is probably one of the two main differentiators that you have to bring into a discussion on investment on whatever kind of asset, be it residential, commercial, office, malls. We're just the discussion and the challenge around efficiency and what you take out of that, both from a direct P&L perspective, but also from an image perspective, is not going down. So I think that it continues to be completely central to this discussion.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to have a controversial question. Are we going to see a technological fracture, or is it more going to be an organizational fracture between the laggards and the innovators? Is it really about the technology and the innovation, or is it more about the mindset, the willingness to take risk, the innovation maturity? So starting off maybe with you, Arnaud.
Yes, so I think I made the point earlier already. I think it's both, because there is no technology leapfrogging without organizational and structural change to support that. So I think what we're seeing is that, and we're working with companies that are innovating on the landlord side and also on the tenant side, and what we observe time and time again when it comes to AI implementation, for example, the companies that are achieving results with their AI pilots or their AI technology onboarding are the companies that had previously already established pretty robust innovation strategies and transformation structures, and I think they go hand in hand. And so it really needs to be both. But I would make the argument that without organizational innovation and commitment, there is no large-scale technology development.
Thank you. Clear. Ricardo?
Well, if you want to make it controversial, I will tell you that tech is the easiest part. As in, you can find it relatively easily. You had 8,000 over there. Arnaud had 7,000 over there. I don't have as many thousands, but I can tell you my ecosystem is well populated with a lot of stuff that we keep on seeing. But my role, just bringing this into a concrete example, this digital business development role didn't exist 2 years ago. Business development, yes, but digital business development only exists because the reality of all businesses, but especially in real estate, is that people that do real estate understand very little about tech, and people that do tech understand very little about real estate. And that means cultural change. That means bringing these two worlds together and ensuring that transformation comes from that. So honestly, as we stand right now, I think culturally, transformationally, even in terms of how you communicate this across the company, this is absolutely critical to make these changes and to make this schism, as you were saying, between laggards and those that do triumph in this reality. So tech's cheap these days, not necessarily on the final invoice, but tech's cheap, easier to find, available, and the reality is this industry normally is not faced so much with, do I have enough money to invest? But actually the question that we have more is, how can I make the organization go after this investment? Really chase this opportunity to change the way we do business. So I think it's much more on that side than on the pure tech side.
Thank you. Short, I would like also to have your perspective, both of you. Short contribution, Risto.
Yeah, again, as everything is so kind of, I think, aligned upon us, even without speaking, I do agree, but what I want to give an example of how to use AI and how techie cheap is that Gemini has this nice addition called Nana Banana Pro, which is image creation with AI. And what really simplified my kind of design workings with different architectural companies was that I take a 2D plan, feed into Nana Banana, try various prompts, have 3D models, ship it to them, and it's done in minutes instead of waiting for 1.5 days for renders to be created. So definitely take it cheap, use it, but again, it's just a step. Doesn't create a big transformation, but step by step.
Thank you. Anna, do you want to add?
So yeah, I agree with you, Ricardo. It's the same for ESG. We've got the ESG teams and we've got the investment teams, and they don't speak the same language, and that's the biggest problem, right? They all want the same thing: to invest in the best assets, to have the best portfolio. They don't communicate. We have to find a way for them to communicate. But then there are just other steps. When you look at ESG, right? You have to collect the data. The sector still doesn't have even utility data, right? And this is something that needs to be bridged partially with technology. And then when you set your KPIs, well, every asset is unique. But that's real estate, right? And that's where the problem comes as well.
Thank you. Maybe my last question to all of you. The reason we exist is to raise awareness about the fact that we need to change. So we want to create impact, we want to create movements, to help the sector enter into transformation, to solve the problems of yesterday, the problems of today, maybe even the problems of tomorrow. So I would like to ask you if you can share one uncomfortable reality that the sector needs to acknowledge about the future of construction and real estate. So, short contribution. If we start with you, Maurice, what is the one source, the one truth uncomfortable that we need to?
Yeah, the construction sector, it's really different compared to other sectors. Sometimes we won't acknowledge that, but it's true. In the US, some years ago, you had the company Carterra, they wanted to implement the way they produce in the manufacturing sector. And CEO, he came from Tesla, and every time he wanted to implement something new, and his employee said, "I'm not sure whether this is going to work in the construction sector." He waved with his mobile phone and he said, "Well, mobile phone companies, producers can do it, we can do it." But finally it didn't work out. They had to close their doors because the construction sector sometimes it is different. I already mentioned the high volatility in the market. And I would just want to mention one other thing, and that is that I only see it in the construction sector, but companies, they don't design themselves what they make. And maybe you think, well, what does that matter? That doesn't help standardization. A project developer goes to an architect and they want to, they draw and design a house or another kind of premises, and they go to a contractor and they ask them to produce it. And well, that doesn't promote standardization. It's like that you want a new car, you hire a technician, and together you design your dream car, and then you go to a car manufacturer and you ask them to build it. Well, it will cost you millions, probably they will laugh and they don't do it, but that is the way how it quite often works in the construction sector. And well, we have to change that the contractor, he will be involved early in the process so he can produce and build buildings that fit into his way of building, and that really can help the innovation and increase the productivity.
So the bank says standardize or die. Thank you. Arnaud.
I think that yeah, we are on the brink of a deep transformation by technology of the way this industry operates, and with that, you know, whether you like it or not, and whether you intend to embrace it or not. And I would say we are probably approaching a point where the cost of doing nothing about your business model is actually going to be more than the cost of doing something.
Highlight sentence. Risto.
Yeah, one word or two words, one thought: low actionability. Landlords talk a lot, the same as developers talk a lot, architects talk a lot. Guys, simple stuff, pilots, just give it a go, try, and soon enough, some data would be gathered, decisions will be made. Let's move. Otherwise, if cost of doing nothing is actually more than doing something, it makes sense to do something. So tech is cheap, give it a go.
Love it. Anna.
Well, my single sentence is ESG and climate change in real estate. If we do not tackle that, if we tackle it, it's going to be expensive. If we do not tackle it, it's going to be a way more expensive. So I agree with you.
Thank you. Ricardo.
Well, I like how you put the question on an uncomfortable truth, and how can that change? For me, it's very simple, and I'll go full circle from where I started. The uncomfortable truth in this industry is not that we are intrinsically conservative, as people tend to think, but it is that we are very complicated in terms of having a million different stakeholders. And that's the key on changing this industry, is understanding that we have so many stakeholders, so different from all other sectors. So if we want to move forward, and we have to move forward, that goes back to one of the reasons why I think 26 really is a year that changes a lot, is exactly because people are realizing that although you have your own interests, we need to pull together to make this happen, because this is very, very, very atomized, and there's a lot of different stakeholders on this industry.
This is also why we exist. We think that to navigate the crisis, we only need to navigate together, collectively, to increase, to create the collective genius, we could say. Thank you very much. That was a pleasure. And this is the end of our panel.
Thank you.